life-saving trauma care. Save more lives. Save our trauma centers. Paid for by the 60+ Association.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala!
All right, 23 minutes before 9 o'clock. It's time for NewsBites. This is the portion of AM Ocala Live where Robin and I will read to you the news from around the world, around the nation, and around the state, once in a while, even from right here in our own backyard. And we do it in short form. We abbreviate it. We cut to the chase, get to the point, and give you a chance to catch up on as many stories as we can possibly read to you in about 23 minutes. Usually we cover between 20 and 25 stories. We also give you the information as far as who we got the story from, which agency, and that gives you what you need to know if you want to look it up on the internet and read more than we're telling you. It gives us an opportunity to put news back in News Talk. And remember, if you would like to advertise on this or any other segment on WOCA, give our sales executives a call at 732-8000, and they will help you figure out how to advertise on WOCA so we can help you get business in through your doors. All right, the first story is from actually south of Florida. Even seasoned scientists were surprised by a rare 5.1 magnitude earthquake that struck yesterday afternoon off the northern coast of Cuba, rattling residents on both sides of the Florida Straits. Timothy Dixon, a University of South Florida geophysics professor and earthquake expert, said the earthquake centered about 112 miles east of Havana in coastal waters, happened about 300 miles from a major fault line between southern Cuba and Hispaniola. The earthquake, which occurred at 3:58 p.m., was not strong enough to cause serious damage, but people reported feeling its effects across the Florida Keys and as far north as Cape Coral on Florida's Gulf Coast. Yesterday's earthquake was the sixth known earthquake between 3.0 and 5.6 magnitude recorded within 125 miles of the area in the past 75 years, according to the U.S. Geological Survey.
Russian security forces launched an aggressive anti-terrorism sweep after coming across multiple unexplained deaths and explosive devices in a region near Sochi, where the Winter Olympic Games will be held in a matter of weeks. A car with a body inside exploded as police approached it in Russia's Stavropol territory, reported Russia's state-owned RIA Novosti, citing the Interior Ministry. In the same area, Russian authorities reportedly discovered a car containing the bodies of 3 men, along with explosive material. The day before, 2 more bodies were found in cars in the same region. All of the victims appear to have been shot, according to a Russian security official and international news reports. 2 were taxi drivers and another reportedly worked assembling furniture. Russian officials are investigating the possible cause and motive for the deaths. A Russian analyst speculated to ABC News the deaths could be related to organized crime, and this is reported by ABC News.
And this story from the Associated Press. After the birth of her daughter about a decade ago, Christy Green got an infection in her breast. Doctors prescribed pain medication and Green got hooked. Authorities allege she soon began popping more and more pills, assisted by the one person who should have been watching out for her health, her doctor. Green died in September of 2012 at the age of 33 from drug toxicity. And now the doctor who prescribed her hundreds of pain pills, William Martin Valak, who is 71 years old, is facing a murder charge for her death and the deaths of 7 other patients who died from drug overdoses. Valak also faces a murder charge in the death of a man killed by a patient who reportedly caused a fatal wreck while under the influence of pain medication.
A brutal fight between a former Marine and his stepfather in Oklahoma ended in the stepfather's death by atomic wedgie, also known as death by underwear. Denver St. Clair had been arguing with his stepson, Brad Davis, age 33, last month when the two began to fight. Davis told police that St. Clair had spoken ill of Davis's mother and then threw the first punch. The men had been drinking. Davis said he fought back and then gave his father an atomic wedgie, in which he stretched the elastic waistband of St. Clair's underwear way up over his head. The waistband strangled St. Clair, who stopped breathing. Davis called 911. But St. Clair was dead by the time officers arrived. According to the affidavit, police said the underwear left a ligature mark around St. Clair's neck. They noted that there was blood around the kitchen and the living room. Davis was booked into the Pottawatomie County Jail, where a judge ordered him held without bond for first-degree murder.
Wow.
Warning labels on underwear now.
Crazy story. All right, next story is from the Los Angeles Times. Prominent Republicans are working to recast the party's message about tackling poverty and boosting the middle class amid concerns that a relentless focus on the troubles of Obamacare will not be enough to guarantee electoral success. The move seeks to address widespread public anxiety about the uneven economic recovery, a topic that Democrats have largely had to themselves in recent months. But even as party strategists push for a higher profile approach, conservative lawmakers face a difficult challenge in crafting a message that appeals to middle-income and working-class voters while maintaining support among the party base. It's the latest acknowledgement that Republicans' traditional emphasis on fiscal austerity and smaller government, while popular among grassroots conservatives and gospel to much of their House majority, has been difficult to sell among the broader electorate. As Republicans approach a midterm election in which they hope to recapture the Senate, they are increasingly worried about being portrayed by Democrats as hard-hearted and unconcerned about the plight of the poor and struggling Americans. On Wednesday, Senator Marco Rubio from here in Florida, a likely 2016 contender for the Republican presidential nomination, jumped into the fray, delivering a speech in which he called for a fundamental change in how government combats poverty by shifting responsibility for most existing federal assistance programs to the states.
A medical student learned an important lesson to never assume anything when he correctly diagnosed a fake patient with a very real and a very deadly disease. Ryan Jones, age 25, a medical student at the University of Virginia, was taking part in a lesson in which local residents act out certain symptoms so that students can practice correctly diagnosing patients. However, one of Jones's patients was unknowingly suffering from a very real condition called abdominal aortic aneurysm. When Jones was examining one of his patients, Jim Malloy, he found signs of the aneurysm in the retiree's abdomen. An abdominal aortic aneurysm results in a large blood vessel in the abdomen being damaged and ballooning out. If left untreated, the aneurysm can burst, leading to fatal consequences 80% of the time. This is according to the National Institute of Health. Initially, Jones was confused by what he found because the abdominal aortic aneurysm was the exact disease Malloy was impersonating as a patient. Wow. Malloy never actually felt any symptoms of the aneurysm, and Jones said his decision to do an abdominal examination was related purely to the fake symptoms that Malloy was given by supervisors. After finding the mass, Jones told his supervising physician, who recommended that Malloy see a cardiologist for an ultrasound. Malloy eventually had surgery to fix the aneurysm without suffering complications. Jones said at the time of his surgery that Malloy's aneurysm measured 5.9 centimeters, which meant that there was a 40% chance that it would rupture within 4 years. Wow, God was at his hands.
Amazing story right there.
I want him as my doctor.
The next story is from the Associated Press. Hunkering down at home rather than going to work, canceling thousands of flights and repairing burst pipes from the Midwest to the Southeast has its price. By one estimate, about $5 billion. The country may be warming up from the polar vortex, but the bone-chilling cold, snow, and ice that gripped much of the country, affecting about 200 million people, brought about the biggest economic disruption delivered by the weather since Superstorm Sandy in 2012, according to Evan Gold, Senior Vice President at Planalytics. a business weather intelligence company in suburban Philadelphia. While the impact came nowhere close to Sandy, which caused an estimated $65 billion in property damage alone, the deep freeze's impact came from its breadth.
A U.S. military plane has crashed in eastern Afghanistan. This is resulting in the deaths of 3 Americans. There are no indications that the aircraft was brought down by enemy fire, said a defense official. This is a quote by NATO. In Afghanistan, International Security Assistance Force service members and 1 ISAF civilian died following an aircraft mishap in eastern Afghanistan today. A defense official told ABC News that the incident involved an MC-12 reconnaissance aircraft flying a nighttime mission over eastern Afghanistan. MC-12s are Beechcraft propeller aircraft that carry multiple surveillance systems that enable the monitoring of different areas at the same time. The feeds are monitored by technicians who fly in the rear of the small aircraft. The crash comes on the same day that an ISAF spokesperson confirmed that a Black Hawk helicopter crash in mid-December that killed 6 soldiers was the result of enemy action, reported by ABC News.
In this story from the Associated Press, doctors are warning that if Congress cuts food stamps, the federal government could be socked with bigger health bills. Maybe not immediately, they say, but over time if the poor wind up in doctors' offices or hospitals as a result. Among the health risks of hunger are spiked rates of diabetes and developmental problems for young children down the road. The doctors' lobbying efforts come as Congress is working on a compromise farm bill that's certain to include food stamp cuts. Republicans want heftier reductions than do Democrats in yet another partisan battle over the government's role in helping poor Americans. Food stamps, known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP for short, feed 1 in 7 Americans and cost almost $80 billion a year, twice what it cost 5 years ago. Conservatives say the program spiraled out of control as the economy struggled and the costs are not sustainable. They say the neediest people will not go hungry. The health and financial risks of hunger have not played a major role in the debate, but the medical community says cutting food aid could backfire through higher Medicaid and Medicare costs.
Pakistan is paying tribute to a 14-year-old hero who died while preventing a suicide bomber from entering his school. Altazar Hassan Bengash and his cousin Musaki al-Bengashi were on their way to Ibrahimazzi School in a Shia-dominated area of northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province on Monday, when a man raised their suspicions by asking them for directions while clad in school uniform. The other students backed off, but Altazaz challenged the bomber and tried to catch him, Musaddiq told CNN News. During the scuffle, the bomber panicked and detonated his bomb. Both died and 2 others were injured. Nearly 2,000 students were gathered for morning assembly at the time. Pakistanis have been venting their outrage at Lashkar-e-Jahavi, also known as LEJ, the militant group that has claimed responsibility for the attack, and calling the nation's highest military award for Altazaz. Altazaz is survived by his parents and 2 sisters. His father, Muhajir Ali, has returned from his work in the United Arab Emirates not to mourn his son's death, he told the Express Tribune, but to celebrate his life. This is his quote: "My son made his mother cry, but saved hundreds of mothers from crying for their children."
Wow.
Unquote.
That's another amazing story.
Reported by Time Magazine. That gave me chills.
The next one is from Reuters. Iran and Russia are negotiating an oil for goods swap worth $1.5 billion a month that would let Iran lift oil exports substantially in defiance of Western sanctions that helped force Tehran to agree to a preliminary deal to end its nuclear program. Russian and Iranian sources close to the barter negotiations said final details were in discussion for a deal that would see Moscow buy up to 500,000 barrels a day of Iranian oil in exchange for Russian equipment and goods. A quote from the a Russian source says good progress is being made at the moment with strong chances of success. The quote goes on to say, "We are discussing the details and the date of signing a deal depends on those details. Our desire is to sign the deal as soon as possible." This according to a senior Iranian official who declined to be named, going on to say, quote, "Our officials are discussing the matter with the Russians and hopefully it will be inked soon regardless of whether we can reach a nuclear agreement in Geneva. It is not clear whether the deal would be implemented before the nuclear agreement outlined in Geneva in November between Iran and 6 world powers is finalized."
This is a story from the Associated Press out of Orlando. The remaining 6 defendants charged in the hazing death of a former A&M drum major are set to appear in court. A status hearing is slated for this morning. The 6 former FAMU band members face manslaughter and hazing charges in the November 2011 death of Robert Champion. Their cases were advanced on the trial docket late last year, but their attorneys continue to discuss possible pleas. 15 former band members were charged in Champion's death. 8 have accepted deals, with 7 already sentenced to combinations of probation and community service. Another, Caleb Jackson, pleaded no contest to manslaughter in April, but is yet to be sentenced. Champion's death led to personnel and policy changes at FAMU and a year-long suspension of the band that was lifted in 2013.
The next story is from the Associated Press. Hank Hunt's granddaughter tried calling 911 from the East Texas hotel room where she could hear her mother dying, just as she was taught to do in an emergency. She didn't know she had to dial 9 on the hotel phone first before dialing 911. Papa Hunt remembers the 9-year-old telling him later, "I tried, but it wouldn't work." Now Hunt has launched a national push to require hotels and other businesses to do away with the dialing anything before calling 911 rule. So far, an online petition for a federal law has gotten 390,000 signatures, and one 911 advocacy group says Hunt has hit on perhaps under-documented issues. "I never dreamed that it would take a life of its own like this," Hunt said this week. "There's been a lot of people out there helping us." Wow, that's a really good point. You're in a hotel, you got a 9 to get, have to dial 9 to get out.
Yes.
And if you're panicked or you're a child and you're trying to dial 911, you don't know that you need to dial 9 or some other number to get out.
No.
So that's a good point. They should be set up so that 911 works, period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a story from ABC News. It's about the latest sex toy that is being showcased at this week's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It is called a Blue Motion Massager that strategically fits into a pair of lacy panties. I think it's probably only for women then. Designed by a New Hampshire couple who worked in the technology industry, the vibrator's pulse and intensity are controlled by a smartphone app. Brian Dunham co-founded the pleasure industry company Oh My Bod with his wife, Suki. Usage spikes at night when everyone is getting into bed and are literally snuggling up to their iPads instead of their partners.
Oh, man.
He's quoted as saying, the couple has been married for 26 years. They have 2 children, ages 15 and 12. He worked for the Tyco toy company, and she worked for Apple. Oh My Bod first titillated the market in 2006 with its iPod vibrator. Where was I? I didn't hear about that. And it's called the Freestyle, and it plays music. One review from a customer says it provides the pleasure of a man without the man. Now, I take issue there.
Okay.
I take issue there. You need 2 people, real people.
The next story is from the BBC. Israel has announced plans to build 1,400 new homes in Jewish settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The move was expected after the release of 26 Palestinian prisoners last month, but was delayed until after a visit by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat said it showed Israel's clear commitment to the destruction of peace efforts. There has been little sign of progress from the direct negotiations mediated by Mr. Kerry, which resumed in July. A dispute over settlement construction led by the collapse of the last talks. About 500,000 Jews live in more than 100 settlements built since Israel's 1967 occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The settlements are considered illegal under international law, although Israel disputes that. On Friday, this morning, Israel's housing ministry issued tenders for the construction of 801 housing units in West Bank settlements, including Efrat, Elkanah, and Emmanuel, and 600 in Ramat Shiomo in East Jerusalem. The ministry also reissued tenders for a further 532 homes in East Jerusalem that had previously failed to attract bids from contractors.
This is a story from the Florida News Network out of Tallahassee. Lawmakers in the Florida State Senate committee say people who threaten to use a gun in order to defend themselves should not face prosecution under Florida's 1020 life law. That appeared to be the consensus after a hearing Wednesday on a measure being called the warning shot bill. Florida State Senator Charlie Dean says it's not really a threat when you get right down to the bare bones of it. Gun lobbyist Marion Hammer says the irony here is that if you shoot someone in self-defense, that's okay under the stand your ground law. But if you hold your fire, you can be prosecuted under the 1020 life law. The warning shot bill is an attempt to include firing a warning shot in the state's stand your ground law. The measure was prompted by the case of a Florida woman who got prison time for literally firing a warning shot at the husband who had been threatening her. The measure passed the Criminal Justice Committee with a unanimous vote. Well, good for them. That woman was misjailed.
The next story is from NBC News. The Indian deputy consul whose arrest and strip search in New York touched off a diplomatic spat between the United States and India was flying home this morning after being ordered to leave our country. A federal grand jury charged Devyani Khobragade with visa fraud and making a false statement for allegedly providing bogus information to get papers for a housekeeper she wanted to bring from India to the United States and pay less than minimum wage. She flew from the United States late yesterday after refusing to waive her diplomatic immunity and was expected to arrive in New Delhi later today, according to her father in a report from the Indian capital. Her head is held high, said her lawyer, Daniel Arshak. She knows she has done no wrong and looks forward to assuring the truth is known. Khobragade was granted diplomatic immunity because the Indian government had moved her from a post at the Indian consulate in New York to the Indian mission in the United Nations, according to a U.S. government official in the report from NBC News.
Meryl Streep has blasted Walt Disney for being a gender bigot. The August Osage County star hid out at the business magnate while speaking at the Hollywood Foreign Press Association Gala in New York City on Tuesday, where she was invited to honor Emma Thompson for her portrait of Mary Poppins creator P.L. Travers in Saving Mr. Banks. Streep said of Thompson, not only is she not irascible, she's practically a saint. There's something so consoling about that old trope, but Emma makes you want to kill yourself because she's a beautiful artist, she's a writer, she's a thinker, she's a living acting conscience. However, the 64-year-old actress used her 9-minute speech to throw in some subtle digs at Walt Disney, who she branded as a hideous anti-Semite. According to Variety, Streep said some of his associates reported that Walt Disney did not really like women, before quoting animator Ward Kimball as saying he didn't trust women or cats. She then read out a letter. She then read out loud a letter written by Walt Disney Company in 1938 to an aspiring female animator. Women do not do any other creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that task is performed entirely by young men. Streep rounded off her speech with a poem she had written for Thompson, titled An Ode to Emma, or What Emma is Owed, where she referred to her friend as a knockout and Oscar Gold. Well, in 1938, that was the sign of the times. That's unfair of Meryl Streep, I think.
And maybe Disney just didn't want unnecessary distractions for his men.
That's right.
I know.
Exactly.
It's a different time now, as you pointed out. All right, that's News Bites for today. We do this each weekday morning to give you a chance to catch up on as much news as possible in a short period of time, and we'll do it again on Monday. We also do it so that we can say we have news back in News Talk. Robin, how many stories did we get in there today?
19.
19, a little bit short. I think some of the stories were longer.
Long,
yeah, some longer stories. If you would like to advertise on that or any segment on WOCA, remember, it's pretty easy to do. We will even read your ad live during that segment if you prefer, although it doesn't have to be that way. If you want an advertisement at WOCA, it's easy to do. You come into WOCA at the Paddock Mall outside of the food court, sit with one of our account executives, and they'll explain how we take your information, spread it out to this community, and bring these listeners through your doors to give you more business. It's as easy as that. Come into the studio and speak to somebody or give us a call, 732-8000, 732-8000. We'll take a little break and we'll be right back. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Larry.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala!
ABC News Now. I'm Karen Chase. The unemployment rate dropped from 7% to 6.7% in December.